second advanced class, and it's not just an advanced class, it's advanced class. You guys are getting the cream of it all. This is going to be, I was telling Natasha, I was telling everybody that what you're getting, whoever takes and runs with this, it's my legacy to you all, and it will be a legacy because it will literally change your whole dynamics of astrology. It'll teach you the technique for predicting very accurately. Now I've got a lot of charts, and I was telling the group that I had to do a big accident for you all to see how accurate it's predicted in my chart. I didn't look at my chart ahead of time, unfortunately, and I don't know that I could have even done anything about it if I had have, because the main Saturn transit was exactly opposing my Uranus, which you know Uranus rules, don't you? Unpredictable things means it's hard to predict. Sudden, unexpected. Is that Uranus? That's what we talk about, Uranus. It also rules the part of the body called the ankle, coincidentally. And my ankle is what, you know, the Achilles heel, and that whole area is related to that. So it's ruled by Aquarius and that planet. So that Saturn was perfect opposition the night that it happened. And then, on top of that, my progressed moon, which we're going to talk about, was sitting on my grand cross of suffering in my chart. And that happens only about every 7 years as that progressed moon goes around that chart. For it to be exactly there and me not know, I'm an astrologer, I should know my own chart. But for me to have not looked ahead and seen that I have a progressed moon hitting my cross is crazy. I mean, you know, that's the most afflicted point it can reach in that chart. So I had those two things, and then I'll show you also the new moon, which are the third thing. So we got new moons, transit Saturn, progressed moon. I'm going to teach you how they work and how accurate they are. And all these charts that I'm showing you today are picked at random, including mine, right? They're all picked at random in the sense that I didn't have any idea what I was going to get when I did them. But I knew they were events that were undeniably final, accurate. And that there's no escaping. It's either there or it's not in that chart. So we're going to do several. I'm going to give each of you handouts as we go along. And I'm going to I want you to, if you don't see the planets in there, I want you, you know, the progressed moon, the transit Saturn, I want you to mark them on the outside of the wheel. Okay, we went way too far this way. Okay. Okay, and remember, it's so important for you to understand this, that, you know, there must be supported by one or two other factors before it can be targeted as actually or triggered as an event in your life. You realize that there's many potential aspects in your chart. You may have transit Saturn going over your ascendant, for example, and most astrologers say, oh, that's terrible, it's doing this and that. But if you don't have the other two supporting factors in the chart, don't be alarmed by Saturn. Saturn's the teacher, yeah, and it may have some influence, but it's not going to be a major dramatic thing. So it has to be in the chart. And you remember I told you many times, I've said if it's not in the root of the chart, don't predict it, okay? If you don't have a bad aspect, let's say you've got a trine between Mars and the Sun, for example. That's a pretty good aspect to have. So all of a sudden you get Saturn squaring Mars in that chart. And Saturn is afflicting Mars by square, but yet the Mars in the chart is not afflicted. It's in a good trine, making good aspects, sextiles, other things. It's not afflicted. You're not going to predict something negative out of that because the root of the tree doesn't promise it. It's when the root of the tree promises it. Like in my chart, I've got Mars squaring my Sun. But my Mars is in Pisces. It rules the feet. Guess what they're going to have to cut into? They do all this, my feet. Ooh, that's awful, isn't it? So what is my Mars doing? It's getting, you know, when I was born, it said you've got Mars squaring Mercury and you've got Mars squaring the Sun. So, you know, so the Sun also, so Mars is in Pisces. Anyway, let me not get drawn into that too much. Let me keep going here. So, okay. These are all very severe things that I'm going to show you because it's the most pronounced thing that can ever happen to somebody. You know, if you went to the mall and bought a dress tomorrow, it's not going to show up in these aspects, you know. We're talking about major influences and things that are critical, and generally that's the most final is death. So you're going to see a very powerful way they can interact in the chart. We talked about this last week, progressed moon aligns with major factors in your chart, and the lunations aligned to impact your chart, and like an alignment in a slot machine. And when all three of those, the transit Saturn, and you get the progressed moon, you get the new moons, all three, which by the way have 28 cycles, 28 day or 28 year. Saturn and the moon have 28 year cycles. That means it takes 28 years for that transit Saturn, which is right up here right now, in Scorpio at about, 17 or 18 degrees. It's going to take 28 years to come back full cycle back to that place again. And if you happen to be born, unfortunately, excuse me, I say that, nobody, if you look at your chart, you're going to say, Ron, don't tell me I'm unfortunate. But if you happen to be born with a square to Saturn or an opposition to Saturn, that means those are always chasing each other throughout the 28-year cycle. And it's not the best aspect to have because it generally makes for a lot of challenges in life. So we call that Saturn chasing the moon because it's got the same cycle as your progressed moon. So they're going to constantly be setting up in square. If you're born with them opposition, they're going to be moving in opposition all the time. So you're going to have to deal with a lot more hard lessons maybe than other people might because you have that Saturn chasing the moon. Yes, honey? A semi-square, 45 degrees.
But is that just half of a square, or is it a little bit more?
It's half of a square, yeah. It's an affliction. It's an affliction. Yeah. Yeah. Well, generally people, generally anybody has that aspect. You got to remember, Saturn is the father in a way. But there's two symbols of a father in a chart. There's Saturn, which is the stern father, the disciplinarian, the rule maker, and strict. And then there's the sun in a chart. And that's kind of the loving spiritual father. It's a different energy. But they're both indicators of a father. If you have moon inflicted into the Saturn in your chart at birth, generally there's a great amount of issues dealing with your parents all your life. It's inescapable because the mother is the moon, the father's that strict Saturn. And generally the mother is also beset with a lot of problems from the father, as well as the child. You see, because the moon is the mother, right? So it carries down that whatever's happening in that home life, the moon, the home, whatever's happening in that environment is going to be producing trauma as much as it does the mother to the child. You see where I'm coming from? So when you see these aspects at birth, you know that, okay? And also, and anytime you see afflictions between moon and Saturn, we're dealing with also the habits. The moon is the habitual patterns. It's the way you feel. It's your subconscious. It's your need to be nurtured. The child at the mother's breast, nursing. That's the kind of the image you see. But as we grow older, we're all still at that place. We are all the child's trying to nurse at the mother's breast. That's part of our need for food and comforts and comfort foods and carbohydrates probably and all that stuff, So, which some people have the discipline to deal with and some don't. So what do? We're dealing with those aspects. We're dealing with energies that show conflicts, okay? And I spend a lot of time with the conflict aspects. You say, if you come to my classes, you say, oh, Ron, it's always all this conflicts. And yeah, because you know why? Because it'll make you a good astrologer. It'll make you able to go right to the bone, right to the core, right to the throat, if you would, and really see that person and see what issues are important in their life. Nobody wants to come and just hear a blue sky story when you come for an astrology reading. They want to hear you go right to the core. It's like one of my students who came with a friend to get a reading here about a month ago, and he walked in, and I had a strong instinct to write the Music Man on top of his chart, and I just saw that in him. There's something about before he got here. I didn't know him at all, and so, but then he's sitting there, and also he's got this real bad affliction to Saturn and I think it's Saturn and Capricorn, and a real bad affliction. And I said, you should have a knee injury. He pulls up his pant leg, and he's got this great scar on his leg, and he says, I've been hammered by this thing for years trying to deal with it. He said, it's just so bad. But see, that's what makes you credible. You know what I mean? People say, well, how the hell do you know that? Well, it's in your chart. You know? If I said, well, I don't know. I just know I know these are the aspects you want to understand. It makes you really able to counsel them people, because that's where they need counsel. They don't need to be told, if they've got a trine between Venus and Jupiter, and they happen to be very fortunate in money and all, they don't have to be counseled that area. They got it all together. These are areas they don't have it together. Make sense? So anyway, okay. Okay, this is when I had my heart attack. This was back in 2008 and 14. Now, I didn't give you that handout, I don't think. I'm going to give. We went through this last week, but I'll just show it to you real quick. The transit Saturn's up here. The inner ring in this chart is the progressed moon. Progressions. All I care is about what? The progressed moon. Okay? And the new moon. Okay? And the new moon in the chart would be where? In the transits, wouldn't it? Right? It's where they are right now. So I want the new moon before the event. Saturn's not going to move much between a month. So wherever it is on a new moon is going to be accurate enough to know what's going on in that chart. So when you do a new moon chart, you see my new moon fell at 3 and 5 degrees. Oh, both, what's that, 5 and 5 degrees. They're right together, new moon, obvious new moon are together. Sagittarius, that puts it right on top of my sun and my Mercury, right here at 5 degrees. And that is exactly squaring my 5 degrees Pisces down here. And what is the heart? It's the sun. What is an attack? Mars. So this was set off by that progressed moon exactly. I mean the new moon rather. The new moon was sitting right on that event. Okay? So then you want to look at transit Saturn. Saturn's sitting up here in this chart at 20 degrees Virgo. It's sitting right on my Grand Cross. Okay? Opposing Jupiter, squaring my ascendant, and squaring my, and squaring Venus, squaring my moon. So my cross is triggered along with the new moon. So we got two indicators already. They're both happening right at the same time. Okay, so that's transit Saturn. The progressed moon is at 15 Capricorn. Now, that's not making a lot of aspect in my chart, but I'll show you here. Okay, so we have a Grand Cross with Neptune and Virgo opposing Jupiter and Pisces, squaring Venus and Sag, and the moon in Gemini. I'm under that same aspect right now, okay, except, the progressed moon in this chart, is right here in Capricorn, but if you I'll show you here. Wait. Okay. So I was born with Mars, Pisces squaring my sun, Mercury conjunction Sagittarius. Now at the time of the event, we need to have the three major indicators afflicting my natal chart. My progressed moon is a 15 Capricorn as shown. It's not triggered in any major aspect, though. It's at the exact midpoint of Mars and the sun. So midpoints I didn't teach you, but they're significant. If you have an affliction in a chart and a planet hits the exact midpoint, right between those two, it tends to trigger that aspect, okay? That's a whole different direction to go in astrology. And I didn't teach it to you yet, but it's something you need to know about. You can't do midpoints all the time because they get to be tedious. I mean, there's so many of them in the chart. But the new moon prior to the event is sitting exactly on top of my sun and Mercury in the 12th. It's squaring my natal Mars in Pisces, second house. And Mars is squaring my sun literally. It can be interpreted as a sun, Mars attack. And Pisces, my Mars is in Pisces, which puts me in the hospital. Sun in the 12th, and my sun is in the 12th house, which is what? Hospitals. Hospitals. Pisces, 12th house. All is related. Okay. Now, add to this the transit Saturn sitting at 20 Virgo, right on top of my Grand Cross. This is the only one recent example of the accuracy of this technique. Now, Saturn is conjunct Neptune and Virgo. Both signify hospitals and health issues. Okay? Okay. So we know what the three are. You got to have two or three for it to be striking. And two can happen pretty good, but three's for sure. Believe me, three is for sure. As I found out the other night again. So, so we talked about the 28 cycle. The moon, it's approximately 20-day cycle, and Saturn's a transit cycle is 28, and the moon's 28. The reason people experience very often no major events when transit Saturn traverses their chart is that the new moon and the progressed moon do not back up their actions. That's why you're going to learn the technique. It's going to work like a charm if you use it. So let me go forward. Now I'm surprised. Where's this work I just did on my own chart for the accident last night? That should have been in here. Let me see if I can find that.